Our youth are fearful and angry because we are not doing near enough to address climate change and save the planet. Is there scientific evidence to allay their fear? If so, where can we find it? So this is obviously coming from a particular perspective, so feel free to speak around this in any way you guys feel like you want to.
Let me just say one initial thought, and then I'll let Xandra give the real answer here. One of the things that's fascinating to me, and this might sound a little bit cynical, but the idea that it's sort of that okay boomer movement, right? Of like, you guys destroyed the world and and you're not doing anything about it, so now we're going to have to be in charge of it. Part of the reason is that because the adults are up against something called math. Like there are physical limits and constraints to what we can do physiologically and physically and mathematically and economically, that actually your ability to even say that thing has been based off of the economic choices that have gone before you. So it's not enough to say, well, you guys failed. Well, this generation isn't up against what that generation was up against. So we can point fingers and blame back and forth there, but I think we have to recognize that math is a moral issue there. You can't just keep we need more money. That's what you always hear. Well, if you put more money, that rarely solves the problem. And so there are real physical limits and boundaries to what it is that we can do. And so I don't see the whole blaming the older generation. In fact, if you go back 2 generations, like if you have a grandparent that lived through the Depression, their environmental footprint is like, I'm talking about like my grandma saving her butter wrappers to grease her skillet and like not having all the light bulbs screwed in the bathroom. It was just an economic way of life. That way of living did not destroy the planet. So to say that the generations who came before us are totally responsible for the situation that we're in, they're responsible in the sense that they lived in that, but let's not say that just because they existed there means that they were directly responsible for the way that everything turned out to be. So I don't think the moral culpability generationally is an entirely consistent argument.
It brings up an interesting term that I think of C.S. Lewis, who called chronological snobbery.
Yeah.
And this is the idea that we could look back on the generations of the past and say, make particular judgments about them based on where we sit. And I kind of want to, in light of the way the world has developed, and so at the pace that it has developed, I wish you could somehow take some people back and be like, okay, what would you do in this situation?
Right.
And I'm really challenged to think that a lot of the decisions would be that much different.
Well, and there are things that people did in the past that were probably not the best environmentally, but they didn't do it maliciously. They didn't have the scientific facts to know the consequences of that outcome. And so that's a bit of a blurring of the distinction when you're blaming in that way too, of saying, well, actually there are things that we're probably doing now, like your smartphone runoff, that 20 years from now, people will point to this generation and say you didn't do enough. So I think the best thing we can do that applies whether you have a 200 square foot apartment or 2,000 acres is to be a faithful steward of what it is that's right in front of you. What does God have for you to be in charge of, and handle that well and live there well enough in a way that you find out the way to care for it and to pass that along to the next generation. That should be a fun task to do. But I don't think, again, we can play the blame game and just punt it around the world and make ourselves feel better about it. We're not really answering the question here.
No, yeah.
That's just the heart behind it. Did you have something you want to say about the scientific evidence on this?
Actually, also about the heart as well, if I may, just addressing the first part of the question. As I was reading this question, I was remembering a time when I was really young and my brother and I had taken our bikes down to the creek, and we liked to go down there and just catch crawdads, because they were so interesting, weird little creatures. They were so cool, right? And we would never take them out. We would always put them back in the bike home. They're actually, they're okay to eat, but they're not, whatever. When you're a kid, you're usually a picky eater. So, but when we were there, one time there were these children that were, these 2 boys, I'll never forget it, that were pulling the crawdads out of the water, and then they were throwing them against the wall of this building and just killing them, one over the other. And they were laughing like it was funny. And it was incredibly disturbing. And I remember just biking home and having this feeling of deep sorrow and emptiness. And yet on our way home, we saw this girl walking a puppy, and we stopped and we played, and it was like instant joy, and we were completely just, fed by. So it's like you have this one interaction where nature's being abused, and then this other interaction where, there's something so beautiful and the nurturing of God's creation. And I think it really shows that there is this deep inherent human connection to nature. So I just want to say it's not wrong to feel bad about what's happening to our natural world. I think it's very appropriate to feel upset, to feel sorrow, even to feel a bit of anger. What we do with those emotions, though, is incredibly important. We, as Christians, are stewards of our emotions, our thoughts, and so we have to react in an appropriate way. And one thing that I like about the younger generation is a lot of people are coming up with creative ideas on how to change things. And I'm reflecting on Paul's words to Timothy when he says, don't let people look down on you because of your youth, but instead be an example to them. And so I'd like to encourage anyone else out there who, if you're a young person, you're interested in this scientific field and you want to do more, I just want to encourage you and say, keep going and keep stepping up, and don't let the anger or the fear be debilitating, but be encouraged at the role that God has for you, and keep pursuing that work.